This is the Expanding Boundaries podcast.
Do you feel trapped? Stuck in a world of mediocrity, constrained by bad habits, limiting beliefs, and feeling unfulfilled? Do you feel that deep down you know you were destined for much more? In Expanding Boundaries, you'll discover how you can break free and step into your real life, a life without limits. And now, here's your host, Michael McLeish.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here again today. I am really excited about today's show, and I have an amazing guest here. And before I introduce him and get started, I do want to have a quick disclaimer. I need all our listeners here to understand very clearly that today's content is specifically for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only, and nothing that we're saying here or suggesting here in this show by me or my guests, it should not be taken as legal or financial advice. Please consult with a competent advisor before making any financial or legal decisions. Holy cow, what a scary thing to say before introducing somebody, right?
That's right. Don't sue
it. Well, I will introduce our guest here. We've got Matt Garabedian, and he is a real estate investor, a coach, a crypto investor and coach, a best-selling author, a man of faith, and a good friend of mine. Matt, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Michael, for having me. It's a pleasure. Glad I could come and hang out and talk all the stuff we like to talk about together here today.
Yeah, it's not hard to find some common discussion for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, tell us, I guess, starting off, just where in the world are you located right now?
I'm sitting in Delray Beach, Florida at the moment. You know, it's a very beautiful place. I'm about a mile from the beach, and I like to walk down there, run down there sometimes. Beautiful beach next to Boca Raton. So I can't really complain. I think it's about 84 degrees. You know, they had the hurricane here a couple of weeks ago. It was devastating up north.
Yeah.
You know, very sad to see what happened with that. But where I am geographically in Florida, we didn't have much damage from that at all. That was my first hurricane because I'm originally from California. So that was the first hurricane that I've experienced since moving here to Florida a little over 2 years ago. So yeah, I'm hanging out.
Awesome. Yeah, I think my only experience with hurricanes was Katrina, and I lived in Northwest Florida, and we thought it was headed for our area, and we went up to Kentucky, which coincidentally was my best friend's wedding. So it was a good excuse to get out of town anyway. But well, I'm glad you made it through there okay without too many issues. You haven't always lived there, though, have you?
No, I moved to Florida a little over 2 years ago, and I was born in California, and from a small town called Fresno. Bigger now, it's probably a little over 500,000 people, but when I grew up there, it certainly wasn't that big. It's a primarily agricultural, based community and commerce there. It's a lot of farmers. Wasn't a lot there to do, but that's where I was born. So I spent most of my life there, and then figured out, it's time to move on to bigger and better, I guess, different coast.
That's awesome. Well, we can get into that later, I guess, but you've built a business and a financial place such that you can just pick up and go and live where you want to live, which is really empowering. And it's something I think a lot of people listening here aspire to as well. I'd like to stay on the subject of geography, if you will, though, just as a little bit more of an icebreaker. This is always fun. If you could go anywhere in the world for, say, 60 days, you had to stay there for 60 days, where would you go?
Anywhere in the world for 60 days?
Yep.
Oof. It's a good question. Somewhere that I haven't been, I guess, would be the initial answer. I'd like to go check out Colombia. It's been on my mind recently. Cartagena is a cool place, I hear. Medellin is another cool place. And, being, basically in South Florida, it's not too hard to travel there distance-wise. I think that would be pretty cool to, explore that part of the world.
Yeah. What draws you to it?
I think just the culture, checking out how, different parts of the world, people there interact and live, and it seems like it's pretty chill and low key, and it looks very beautiful. So it's just something that I've recently wanted to do. I was just in Mexico about a month and a half ago. And
that looked like a great time.
It was a different experience because I saw just how poor that particular part of Mexico it really is. I was actually closer to South America than I was the United States, because when I used to go to Mexico, it'd be like Tijuana, and that's like at the border of San Diego, basically,
Right.
So being deeper into Mexico was an eye opener. It was like, wow, like there's a very, very poor country here, and it gave me perspective and made me feel very thankful for my situation,
100%.
And I think, as you know, like traveling, just it opens your perspective, and it gives you a chance to like really reflect like how small you really are in the grand scheme of things and how big the world is. I think the world's big. A lot of people say the world's small, but like, there's so many, 8 billion people, and we're just one of them. So helps you kind of look at things from a different lens.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even if you can't travel right now, one of the things I used to do, I haven't done this in a while, but I would just get on Google Earth and I'd flip it around to some part of the globe I've never been. And you just zoom in on the cities, and there are these massive cities that you've never heard of. And people are living their lives, doing their thing there, and they don't have a clue who you are, and you have no idea about their culture. It's so huge what we haven't seen and heard of in this world. It's man, there's so much to explore out there.
For sure.
Cool. Well, so I guess the last question I have in this topic here is, you travel quite a bit. So besides the obvious, clothing and toiletries or specific things to the trip, what's something that you never leave home without when you're traveling?
Oh, wow. Good reading material. I have a devotional that I like to take. I like to take my Bible because I like to start most of my mornings off like reading God's word. That's just who I am and my beliefs. It puts me on a positive note for each day. So I like to have that. Anything else you could buy, Right. So tend to overpack on clothing. So I'm trying to learn how to not do that. And everything else, you got your passport and your money, and everything else is you can figure it out,
Yeah. Well, I love that because it's so easy for us to travel somewhere and we have like this vacation, like we're completely exiting our normal life and going to this place to, do whatever we're there to do. And I love that, you're taking a piece that, keeps you grounded and keeps you, where you feel like you need to be as a person. And then you can still be there and explore that location. So I really appreciate that. So, well, today, I wanted to really get into this topic, and Matt here's a bit of a subject matter expert in the world of crypto. And so I know a lot of our listeners here probably have heard about crypto. Maybe they've dabbled in it a little bit, but I'd like to basically start from scratch as if our listener here has never heard of it. And, I've had a interesting progression in my relationship with the asset class. And yeah, I've been seeing you really dive into this space, over the last year and a half. Were you involved in crypto before, say, spring of 2021? Because that's when I got into it at the same time.
I loosely say yes, because, I bought some Bitcoin and I bought some Ethereum in 2017 when everyone was all hype about it. And then, it wasn't too long after that I ended up panic selling it and not looking at it again till, late 2020, not even understanding what it is that, Bitcoin was or what Ethereum was designed to do. Just didn't ever spend any time like really diving into what exactly is crypto, what's the whole point of it. So I would really say I really got involved in late 2020.
Okay. That's really interesting. Yeah, I used to be a lot more risk averse, and so when I would hear about the Bitcoin and people talking about it, and then these new
altcoins, if you will, came up, and I thought it was like, at first I thought it was kind of like a joke or like some kind of novelty thing. And then, people were saying it's a scam, and, there's nothing really physical to buy that you can, retain. And it was just like such a racket. It was scary to me. I just went cross-eyed and just said, nope, I'm going to put my hands over my ears and my eyes and just ignore it. And at some point, well, we're in a similar mastermind, and our leader there, Mark, he said, "Hey, guys, pay attention to this." And when he says pay attention to something, I know I've learned over the years to not ignore that. So that was my intro. So I guess for
very similar in a sense. Yeah, very similar.
Yeah,
in terms of we FOMO into things because of our our group, and all of us are movers and shakers and guys that are always trying to do the next cool thing or make the next dollar, and you're like, well, I don't want to be left out.
Right.
So it happens.
Ooh, I have done some FOMO moves in crypto for sure. So I guess before we really get into the really underlying mechanics here, for the layperson listening here, what is crypto?
I think it's the future of currency, a medium of exchange. It's a digital asset. It's a digital store of value. It's freedom. I think crypto has a lot of different explanations of what different people may think it is. When I say freedom, there's a lot of places in the world that, have to be concerned about and including here. I mean, let's be honest, like the government hand in our business, the future of its currency, the stability of its currency. Right now, the dollar looks like it's strong, but in my opinion, it's headed in the wrong direction. And, we've seen many examples of currency inflation ends up turning into hyperinflation, and that currency almost, what it does, it becomes worthless. I'm not saying that's happening in the United States, but it's certainly happened in empires of the past and countries of the past. So, nothing is off the table. But the way that I look at things is the division of wealth is broadening at such a fast pace that it's almost a necessity to be able to figure out how to control not only your money, but how to grow it. And I just don't see any better option to like really become super rich or wealthy in a short amount of time with a limited amount of money to invest. When I say limited, I mean, I think you see, Michael, like $5,000 to $10,000 in the right play you could 600x your money. And you can't do that in any other asset class. Yes, there's volatility. Yes, there's risk. But, if you kind of learn the rules of the game and stay patient and look at history and historicals and charts and perspectives and have an intuition, then I think this could really benefit a lot of people. Okay.
So there's a lot in there that we can unpack for sure. And you're making a very good case for crypto of the purpose for it, digital store of value, being able to exercise freedom. And we saw a case in Canada recently in the last year where somebody donated money to a particular cause, and the government basically froze their bank accounts and held their money hostage, right? And so I think that's a good case for crypto, again, to be able to empower people to control an asset, right? And be able to move things where they want it.
Well, look at PayPal. I mean, right? Like you heard recently that they could take $2,500 from you if you say something against their, what's the word? Their freedom of speech or their
community standards or whatever that is.
Right, yeah. Like if you say something on your social or protest against something that they deem to be against community standards, they could take your money. Like it's insane to me. I don't even know how that is even like possible. But it just goes to show you they're slowly introducing more and more control. And then we're going to look up one day and it's going to be, a central bank digital currency, and everyone's going to be on this, standard of control. And if you say something or act out or, vote for the wrong person or say something against the government, they could shut off your spending, or they could control what they deem is necessary spending. So I 100% believe this is what's coming. And those that are fortunate enough to understand that and take that seriously now can try to take some efforts to try to become, self-sovereign and have enough money that they don't need to be a pawn.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just again, very empowering in the right. If you're using it correctly, in theory, it can be very empowering versus, again, being an indentured servant to the system.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's even one more step back. And what is it exactly, though? Because I don't have any physical coins that I can claim, value, or exchange. So how is this store of value, or this exercise in freedom, or exercise of controlling an asset, what is it actually in the world? Like, it's computer based, right? But what does that actually mean?
Well, I think, to your question, if you walked into your bank right now and said, I need to withdraw $100,000 or $1 million, they would look at you kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't actually store your exact amount of money in that bank, right? It's all on a ledger. And, that ledger's balanced. And I think if you have a certain cash request, like, you have to do that in advance so they can order the money to be delivered there. So, you can't just walk in and say, they'll just tell you no, which is insane because it's your money, but you're giving it to a third party to manage and lend out. And that's another topic, but they do it the same way. It's all managed via ledger, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same way crypto is, but instead of giving it to B of A or Wells Fargo or some other bank to manage, you become the self-custodian of your money, which to me makes sense. And the way that it's managed is on a blockchain, which is run by hundreds of thousands of computers as opposed to people. So what that allows it to do is to be fair, open, transparent, and cannot be manipulated or deleted or somehow, somehow tarnished in a sense that everything is kept in check by many computers that can't defraud the other. It has to be balanced out. And that's the power of blockchain. That's what really makes this whole conversation a reality, is because of the blockchain. And that's where a lot of people haven't understood that yet, because they just haven't taken the time to understand what the blockchain is and how powerful it is. And crypto just happens to be one of the things that it runs on. But that's what makes crypto, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the blockchain has got many uses, and it's a game changer. So I hope I'm explaining what I think the difference is, versus the mentality of like, well, I can hold this in my hand, it's tangible. I can't hold my crypto, it's not tangible to me. But, at the same time, more and more of our world is going digital, right? It's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at, these examples of how industries have been totally revolutionized by technology, like an Uber or an Airbnb, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's leveraged technology in order to change an industry. And it just makes sense to me that so many things have been changed via technology. So why wouldn't our currency be?
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm a betting man, I'm like, okay, this is inevitable. And it wasn't that long ago, Michael, that, I like to pull this out sometimes and it cracks me up, but it was only in the year 2000, so 22 years ago, where there was an article written where it says the internet may be just a passing fad.
I
That was
remember
only
that. Yeah.
2 years ago. That's crazy to me, right? You would think that was like written in the 80s.
Yeah.
Now imagine, I mean, we couldn't survive without the internet.
We can't find our way to the grocery store without the internet now.
I mean, we do everything on the internet. So, it's, to me, it's like, it's very similar in a sense that it was so misunderstood that people could not predict how impactful it eventually became. And I feel the same way about the blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Yeah, very good. I think that's very helpful. I think that a couple of key things that you said and what was implied there was in our current monetary system, there is technically a ledger, right? The bank or the central banks have some kind of ledger so that digitally you can look at your bank account on your phone and see how much money you technically have and how much you can spend. But we don't have as much control over that as we are led to believe. And so we've always had a big, high degree or amount of faith and trust in that system. And as the world turns right now, again, going back to the Canadian example, that trust is getting eroded and quickly, and the PayPal thing. And one argument, I guess, that has been made against crypto is, well, it's magic made up internet money and somebody can just make up their own and print more. And so how does that work, in terms of the context of a ledger and what you talked about as far as like validation or, different groups doing that? How does one not have the ability to print more coins of a given token like Bitcoin?
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing about it is when there's a emerging technology and there's people making money, there's going to be a lot of people coming in to take advantage of that, right? So there's, 15,000 different cryptocurrencies right now, and most of them are shit. Like there's majority of them that will not be around in the next bull run. But, right now I still think this is we're still in a speculative era because none of this is proven to be like solve any real world problems yet. It's all kind of like that, the example of the IPO craze, right? When internet companies were coming out and getting crazy valuations, but not producing any revenue.
Right.
And they just blew up and were based on hype and future promises or projections. And in a sense, a lot of the cryptos outside of a handful are based on speculation and future potential. So just be aware of that. And as far as the question is, well, how do they not just continue to mint more or produce more? Well, a lot of them have what they call a white paper that will determine what the game strategy is, how many tokens are going to be available, what's the max supply? Is there like a burn rate function in there? Well, is it inflationary or deflationary? These are all kind of like higher level terms that you have to kind of start understanding what they mean. Mutable, immutable. There's like a lot of different, it's like a new language, right?
Right.
But, as far as, Bitcoin's concerned, that has a finite amount of, I believe, 19 million Bitcoin. And so no more will ever be produced than that max supply. Other cryptos, like Ethereum, it's not the same, right? Like there is a max supply, but it's like, I don't even know, it's probably in the trillions, right? So it's inconceivable to think that, the last Ethereum would be, owned, right? It's conceivable that the last Bitcoin will be mined, and there's a max supply of that, and therefore one could argue that's why it's valued more because it's a limited supply. But it also has that first mover advantage, and it's the granddaddy of it. And maybe it turns out to be a blockbuster story in the world of crypto, right? Where you think it's the giant, and then time and technology surpass it, and it's a relic. I think even already right now, there's different currencies that do different things more superior than Bitcoin. And I think a lot of people that are in crypto for a while start to look at Bitcoin as kind of like a dinosaur already. So we'll see,
Yeah.
it needs to be seen. But I think the next 5 years is going to be super interesting to see, because there's so much potential in crypto when you start getting out of just the fact that it's a currency, but looking at the way that it could change banking and DeFi, which is decentralized finance, and how you can learn to be your own bank, and staking rewards, and the potential to get into something that pays a real yield that's not so much of a Ponzi. So I think some of the destruction that we've witnessed this past, 8-9 months of a lot of people getting wrecked. These things happen in technology that's so new, and mistakes were made, and probably legislation and regulation is going to wipe out a lot of things that, did a lot of harm, which I think in the long run is probably good, because it needs to be stable in order for it to be like highly mass adopted. Because right now, I read, it's maybe like 3% of the world population has ever transacted in crypto. It's only 3%.
Yeah.
And so, what happens when it's at 13 or 33, it starts to get more.
Imagine 80%, 90%. Holy cow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's scary to think of being able to have that type of impact, not scary in a sense that's scary in a bad way. It's scary of like how much wealth you could build just by participating today.
Yep. I don't think people realize that, because even they might hear all this buzz, but the participation rate worldwide is still, if you participate in it, you're a 3%er, right?
Yeah.
And if you stay in it, it's going to be huge.
It's crazy.
So what I just circling back here to recap what we talked about as far as like, why can't somebody just mint their own coin? I think the important takeaways are all the projects are a little different, and the better ones have a white paper, which basically says, here's the rules for this particular project, this coin, right? And then they put it into software code. So the rules are now in code, and a good project, you can't just willy-nilly change the rules. It's either, written in stone, immutable code. It can't be changed by a human being ever, or there's some sort of consensus function where multiple groups of people or multiple individuals, and the scary one is when one person can change the rules. That's when I think you have a lot of risk in a given project. But I think that's the important thing. And something I like to point out to people that are newer to this space, they have all this trust in the US finance system. We're printing money like there's no tomorrow. We are minting more money and devaluing our currency every single day. And I don't have the stats here in front of me, but compared to most every crypto project out there, it's absurd. And there's no control over it. There's no consensus. There's not really the people that own dollar bills have no control over that. They don't have a say over that. It's at the whim of another organization. So I think that's an important distinction that people forget about.
That's right.
So I want to not keep you here all day. I think we could go into this topic for 2-3 hours, honestly, here, but I don't want to use up all your time, and maybe we can do a separate show. So I want to kind of do maybe a quick speed round here on some questions here. If somebody listening wanted to get into crypto, what's something they should look at in terms of Bitcoin or an altcoin before they invest in it? Like what's the top markers for you that say this is a good project that may be worth taking a risk?
This is for someone wanting to get in as a newbie?
Sure.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't put my money into anything I couldn't explain to someone else. So my advice to that person is go do 50, 100 hours of research on YouTube, right? Like there's plenty of information on YouTube. Dive into Twitter, pick up a book, educate yourself so that you can explain to your neighbor or to your significant other why you invested in that. Until you can do that, I wouldn't put your money into anything, because you're just not going to understand what you're investing in. And the minute that investment tanks, because inevitably we go through these cycles, you're not going to have enough conviction to hold on to it to get to the reward, right? So you might lose money, you might, who knows, right? You might lose your mind, anything's possible.
Yeah.
So, just be careful with just FOMOing into projects, and just because your neighbor or something you see online is promising something amazing, just really take the time to understand it yourself. And then you'll start to understand why, an Ethereum versus a Cardano versus a Bitcoin versus a Hex versus a Pulse chain, a Pulse X, like what do these even mean? And it'll give you knowledge and intel to make the decision best suited for you.
Yeah. I think that's so key because, we're still used to being in the society of like trusting these authority figures that say, just buy this thing, you'll be okay. And in the US dollars, it's pretty low risk. It's fairly stable, but nobody's going to get rich by buying a dollar and holding on to it. Whereas in crypto, like you said, you can 600, 6,000, 600,000x the right project. And I'm not saying that's realistic for everything, but the power is there. The potential is there. And, I'm not really a big Spider-Man fan, but with great power comes great responsibility, right? You have the responsibility to learn these projects on your own, to be able to harness this and be responsible for your own financial future.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, couldn't have said it better, right? Like that's why I've never really invested in stocks, because I never took the initiative or even wanted to go and research different companies and figure out where the best stock could be. But, I invest in real estate because I've spent time to understand how to analyze a property and what goes into making sure a deal is a good deal. And we can buy houses sight unseen sometimes because we kind of know the worst case scenario a lot of times. And that's important too. Like, what's the worst case scenario in crypto? And are you okay with it? And if all's good, then go for it.
Yeah. Well, on that note, how much should somebody that's new into the crypto space, how much should they invest?
They shouldn't invest anything that they're not willing to lose. I'm sure everyone's heard that before, but it's the truth, because there's times that I've put in more money than I should have, and it kind of makes me uncomfortable, and that carries over into different aspects of my mood and my personality, and it affects having relationships with others or where my mind is at. Because when it's good, it's great, and when it's bad, it's bad. And so I've learned that lesson many times, because you get greedy sometimes, because I can put more in, I make more, but then when the market's down and things are not where they used to be, that weighs on you too. And I think you just got to protect your peace and make sure that you're just staying conservative and not getting overly greedy, and just taking it slow and where it's comfortable for you.
I like that. I've never heard it put that way before. And what you just said there at the very end, protecting your peace. So yeah, don't invest any more than you're willing to lose, but invest the amount that you're okay, that you can stay at peace, whether it's up or down, and live your life, outside of that, and be the best human you can be until, you have some exit strategy. Or if you lose it all, again, you can be at peace at that. So I think that's really great advice. Well, I think that is just about all we have time to dive into. I mean, there's so much more to this topic than even I realized in setting this interview up here. Matt, I really appreciate it. I would love to just dive into a couple of things here. Again, just kind of speed questions here, but if you could pull your younger self aside, maybe your 20-year-old version of yourself, what would be the most meaningful advice you would give him today?
Get around bigger thinkers faster. Get a mentor earlier, and focus on putting assets, under control faster, so that you can have a better future faster.
All right. I love that. Okay. Now, I know, Matt, you mentioned, or I guess I saw online here, and you've talked about it, I guess, in our mastermind groups, you're into some real estate coaching. You're also into crypto coaching. So tell us, what does that look like?
So I help people that are brand new, mostly, or people that are somewhat involved in crypto. I help them either one-on-one or in a group setting. And the group setting is just a Telegram group. There's close to 100 people in there, and we're just discussing strategies, daily news, events, topics, just kind of a discourse or discord in terms of what's happening, what are people's opinions. For example, there was a free crypto that was given out this past couple days. So, if you weren't a part of that group or didn't have any knowledge, you potentially missed out on free money. So, there's always some news or some opportunity in crypto. So, we're discussing that, of course, best security practices, which is a huge, thing in crypto, is being able to secure and manage your own crypto. Yeah. So there's just a lot that someone that would want to get serious with crypto would benefit from being a part of that community. Or if they just wanted a direct one-on-one, I also offer that, where I just get on a Zoom call like this and walk them through A to Z. Like, here's how we start. Here's the basics. Here's what you need to do. Set up your exchanges. Here's how you onboard fiat. Here's how you use your MetaMask and your cold storage wallet. And here are the terms and coins that, we like. And it goes on, right? It's, like learning a new language.
Well, if there's anything I've learned about working with coaches over the years, yes, you can go on YouTube and you can learn everything you need to know. But coaching really can help you shortcut. Again, what you even mentioned, like doing your own research is still important, but this is a way to kind of shortcut that and point people in the right direction in alignment with their goals. If that is something anybody listening is interested in, I will put a link in the show notes here and you can connect with Matt that way. But maybe somebody's not ready for coaching, but they want to get their hands on some reading. I know you also have a book out on this subject as well. Is that right?
Yeah. I wrote a book on crypto. It's done really well. I'm happy with the feedback I've gotten. It was on a bestseller for Amazon, which was cool. I've gotten some good feedback and I think it's almost like 50 or 60, I haven't looked recently, but 5-star reviews. So for a little guy like myself, that's cool. Like, just to have that as an accomplishment. The book is called The Hex Phenomenon, and
HEX.
Leave a link. HEX Phenomenon, and we can leave a link to Michael if anybody's interested in that.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much, and I think I'm going to wrap up if you're okay with that. Matt, thank you so much for joining me here today. And it was a pleasure having you on the show here. I'm sorry we had some audio and video technical issues, so thank you for your patience in getting the show rolling here today.
You got it, brother. It's always great to talk to you and see you, and I look forward to seeing you here soon.
All right. Likewise. Hopefully we can do another one and maybe dive deeper into one of these particular places we can go on the subject. And I'll wrap up with one last piece here. Just for those of you listening, just go back, review this again in your mind, if only, and think about one big idea, one big takeaway that you can take some action on, whether that being researching deeper into understanding what the blockchain is, or maybe if you're already involved, maybe you can dive deeper into another project or understand the security side of things. There's a lot of places you can go into here, but I encourage you to take some action, big or small, if this is a space that you want to explore further and expand your boundaries. Hey, thanks again for listening to today's show. And one of the things I wanted to add on here at the very end was sometimes when you're new to something, you're going to make some mistakes. And I made a mistake in this last show here with Matt. I failed to ask him about how you as a listener can reach out, how you can connect with him. And he graciously gave me a few things that I can add here to the show notes. First off, you can find him on Instagram at PhenomInvestor 2.0. And you can also find him on YouTube, and that is youtube.com/Matt Garabedian. I'll include links for both of those in the show notes. In addition, we'll have the link if you're interested in joining his crypto course and getting some training in how to get started in cryptocurrency. That link will be included, as well as a link to his book, The Hex Phenomenon. All those will be there in the show notes for you. And thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you got a lot of value out of today's show, and we'll see you on the next one.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.